All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fourth event in the Brennan Justice Talk series for this session. Sorry, the first one for this session, the fourth one this year. And tonight's presentation, which is entitled AI and Inclusivity in the Legal Profession, and is part of the wonderful Tech and Social Justice Week and program of events here at UTS Law. My name is Chloe McKay, and I am one of the student co-directors of the Brennan Justice and Leadership Program, and I am delighted to see you all here. I am joined here with a few key members of our Brennan team. Firstly, my fellow co-director from the LSS, Georgia Mitchell, Crystal Meikle and Anthea Vogel are student programs coordinators. Other fellow members of the Brennan Management Committee, and most importantly, our special guest and presenter for this evening, Angelique Nellis. Before we officially begin, I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation upon whose ancestral lands our city campus now stands. I would also like to pay respects to the elders, both past and present, and acknowledge them as the traditional custodians of knowledge for this land, over which sovereignty has never ceded. Tonight, we have the unique pleasure of being connected with UTS law students across multiple stages in their degrees and locations, all passionate about social justice. I'll just take a quick moment before we launch into proceedings to lay out some light Zoom housekeeping. This Zoom event is being recorded for teaching, learning, and event purposes. Only key speakers and those that ask questions in discussion time will appear in the Zoom recording. As you no doubt know from your classes, when you are not speaking, please keep your microphone on mute. There will be time for questions at the end, and I encourage you all to engage following the talk. You can do this by raising your hand at the close of the presentation or popping your question in the chat during or after the presentation. Tonight, we expect quite a lot of the Brennan community to tune in, so please do turn on your camera when asking a question during discussion time. We'd love to see your faces. Lastly, student ROJ points will be automatically accrued by tuning into this talk, but please do message Crystal in the chat if your display name is different to your name listed on Career Hub. Now that all the housekeeping is settled, I'd like to introduce to you our special guest and key speaker, Angelique Nellis. Angelique is a lawyer at Ashurst. She's passionate about the law, diversity, and social justice. She practices in dispute resolution and investigations, having worked in Canberra, Sydney, Japan, Singapore, and completed a secondment in Hong Kong. A 2021 graduate of ANU with a Bachelor of Laws Honours and International Security Studies, she has also studied at Harvard Law School and the Hague Academy. Admitted to practice in 2022, she founded Lawyers for Diversity and sits on key legal committees. In 2023, she won the ACT Law Society's New Lawyer of the Year. Her interests include digital assets, distributed ledger tech, and AI. And now, thank you so much for joining us, Angelique, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Chloe, and hello, everyone. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm presenting this session from Ngunnawal and Ngambri land here in Canberra. I also recognise the traditional owners of the countries where you all have joined from today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present in this session. I pay my respect to all elders past and present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and their cultures and connections to the land and waters of Australia. So yes, as Chloe mentioned, I'm Angelique. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a lawyer at Ashurst and just really passionate about advocating for diversity, inclusion, social justice in the legal profession. So today, as you may have guessed it, we are going to be exploring a critical question, which is, can AI help us create a more inclusive legal workforce? Now, I really came across this topic because I'm part of the ACT New Lawyers Committee, and they wanted an article on inclusivity in the legal profession, and this is just when ChatGPT launched. So I realized there wasn't a lot of literature on the potential intersection of both these topics. So I kind of got down the rabbit hole by writing that article. And obviously, I'm by no means an AI tech expert, but definitely a diversity advocate and an enthusiast when it comes to that. So bear with me, especially if you came here today asking very AI specific questions. I'm still a student, but yeah, really keen to be here, be part of these Brennan Justice talks, and discuss really a topic that's close to my heart. Like I said, the intersection of artificial intelligence and inclusivity in the legal profession. So as someone who has navigated the complexities of law across various jurisdictions from Canberra now to Boston and Hong Kong, I've witnessed firsthand the challenges and opportunities that our profession faces. And I think it's really important as law students, as you are now, who are potentially future lawyers if you choose to do that, it's really important to cast your mind to the legal profession and what is in store for you. And like I said, apologies in advance if the photo is slightly terrifying. I did ask ChatGPT to generate a photo of what they thought represented AI and legal diversity, and that's what I got. So every time I see the photo, it slightly terrifies me, but there we go. ChatGPT for you. But now we're going to run, so Crystal's going to assist me. We're going to run a word cloud. So if you could just get your mobile or second device handy and visit menti.com. And you'll input the code on the screen. We're going to do this twice tonight. I just think it'll be interesting to see if there's any opinions that have changed. I know I was very new to the idea of how AI can contribute to legal inclusivity, but I'm interested to see what your thoughts are, and yeah, if there's any way you think it can contribute, if it can contribute at all, would be great to get at least one response. Oh, I just saw the chat. Thanks. And look, maybe if there's no responses at all, it's maybe an indication as to, great, you joined this session so we can think about how AI can contribute to legal inclusivity. But yeah, I might give you guys a moment if there's any burning responses. If not, we can proceed, and maybe by the end, oh, amazing. Greater insights, yes. Remove prejudice, that is something we'll be discussing, especially, oh, it's all coming in, I love it. Removing prejudice and mapping out biases is exactly what we'll be focusing on, especially in the recruitment process. Education, yes, helping to educate others. That I think is also a really important part of AI and access to justice, which will be slightly different to what my presentation today will be representing, but it's still very important when we talk about legal inclusivity as to how people engage in the profession. And same thing with access to information, accessibility. Yes, we'll be talking about that. Support, amazing. So it sounds like you're all on the right track, and it's definitely a few things that we'll be talking about today. So thanks so much for engaging in that. Now let me just go back to sharing my screen and we can continue the conversation. Just give me a moment. Amazing. Everyone can see everything's good to go. Terrific. Okay. So my journey in law has been marked by a deep passion for social justice and a commitment to creating a more inclusive and professional, diverse profession. Now, I am an Anglo-Indian Dutch individual who migrated from the Netherlands to Australia. So I basically didn't know any English when I came here at the age of 8. And it was quite a confronting situation, especially being the first in my family to do law and not have that generational legal experience as some may have. So I obviously did experience my fair share of discrimination and various lived experiences that has made me the lawyer that I am today and the person that I am today. And that's why I think that interest of diversity and inclusion has really formed my practice. But yeah, let's be honest, the profession and the legal profession has historically been anything but inclusive, and I think in Australia that's very prevalent. The legal field has often mirrored the inequalities present in society at large, and despite efforts to diversify, systemic barriers remain and continue to today. So that's where the question of how AI can help us break these barriers have emerged. So today I want to explore whether AI holds the key to unlocking a transformative path towards greater inclusivity in our legal workforce. And as you all know, we're living in very rapid technologically advancement times where AI has moved really from the realm of science fiction to a reality that really touches every aspect of our lives. So as we enter into this fourth industrial revolution, AI is more than just a buzzword. It is transforming how industries are shaped, and the legal profession is really no exception to this. But beyond its capacity to enhance efficiencies and accuracies, AI holds a promise that is even more profound. And that's what I mentioned before, the potential to foster a more inclusive legal profession. The legal profession is known for its adherence to tradition and its slow pace of change. And AI promises to revolutionize how we practice law, offering efficiencies and insights that were previously unimaginable. So this presentation, as I mentioned before, is slightly separate to an equally important question, which is how AI can provide greater access to justice for individuals who engage with our legal system. So it is primarily focused on the legal profession. But in this talk, I will explore the possibilities, the power, and the limitations of AI in creating a more inclusive workforce. So as you will see there, I'll be talking about the current state of inclusivity in the legal profession, the potential of AI as an equalizer, limitations and also ethical considerations, and how the future would look. So when it comes to defining terms, as you may all know as law students, lawyers love to define terminology before discussing from it. So I will definitely not steer away from that practice. So I think it's important before we delve into the potential of AI, it's crucial to establish a clear understanding of what we mean by inclusivity. And sometimes diversity and inclusion is used interchangeably. And I think it's important to figure out what each word actually means. So Rita Mitigans is ADP's Chief Diversity and Social Responsibility Officer, and she provided some very clear insights. And I think she did a good job when she said that diversity is really the what. It is the demographic makeup of a workforce that includes aspects like gender, race, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, and more. So it represents the unique lived experiences and characteristics that each lawyer, law student, person brings to the table. Inclusion, on the other hand, is the how. So it's the measure of a workplace culture that enables diversity to thrive. So it's about fostering an environment where everyone feels welcomed, respected, supported, valued, really irrespective of their diverse attributes. But without inclusion, diversity cannot flourish. So otherwise, it kind of just remains a superficial commitment rather than a transformative force. So inclusivity is not just about having a diverse workforce. And I think that's important to differentiate because it's about ensuring that diverse voices are heard. They have the opportunity to influence decisions just generally, but also about them, and they have been supported in their professional growth. So it's about breaking those barriers that have historically marginalized certain groups. And that's what inclusion is all about, and that's what I'll be focusing on in my presentation. I think it is also interesting to note that inclusion remains notoriously difficult to measure. So while diversity can be quantified through metrics and percentages, inclusion, as you can appreciate, is more intangible. It's about how an individual feels, whether they experience a sense of belonging, respect and support. So this challenge is also exacerbated in the legal profession where culture is often hierarchical and tradition bound. So it's kind of difficult sometimes to gauge the inclusivity of environments that appear diverse on the surface, if that makes sense. So this is where I think AI can come in to play. And when I'm talking about AI, like I said, very basic definition, but it's basically referring to the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines, especially computer programs, and how these programs can learn, reason, and self-correct. So in the context of the legal profession, AI can be used for a variety of tasks, from automating routine legal research to analyzing vast amounts of data. So I am, like I said, by no means an expert, but I'm definitely an AI legal diversity enthusiast. So let's begin by acknowledging the state of inclusivity in the profession. So the legal field traditionally has been dominated by certain demographics, with people of color, women, and those from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, among others, often being underrepresented. This lack of diversity is not just a numbers game. I really think it does impact the quality of legal services that firms and community services provide, access to justice, as we discussed previously, and the overall integrity of our legal system here in Australia and the world. That being said, I have to say the current stats are promising. The 2022 National Profile of Solicitors reported that the Australian solicitors are now younger, more female, and more diverse. So while that's great, I'll continue. According to 2023 Annual Profile of Solicitors in New South Wales, for the 7th consecutive year, female solicitors outnumbered male solicitors. I do have a slight issue here with the binary nature of the statistics and not including non-binary individuals, but we get an idea. The profession was also seen to be culturally diverse, with 31% of solicitors being born overseas and 21% speaking a language other than English at home. And there was also a greater flexibility at work and taking into account people with caring responsibilities, with only 73% of solicitors working full-time. Now, in many ways, these statistics, as I said, are actually more reflective of a diverse workforce, not necessarily an inclusive one. Despite efforts to increase inclusivity, the profession remains overwhelmingly homogenous, particularly at the highest levels of leadership. Like I mentioned, women, people of color, LGBTIQ, plus individuals and those with disabilities continue to be underrepresented and often undervalued. So this lack of inclusivity not only undermines the fairness and integrity of the legal system, but also deprives our profession of the diverse perspectives that are essential for effective problem solving and decision making. So over the years, we've seen various initiatives aimed at promoting inclusivity. So that could be mentoring programs, diversity quotas, bias training, and I could do a whole presentation on the pros and cons of those. But while these efforts have had some impact, they haven't been the remedy a lot of people in the profession have hoped for. So like I said, the question remains, how can we do better? And this is where the promise of AI really enters the conversation. I think generally also, just taking a moment here, it is important for law students to understand these topics as they prepare to be lawyers. Like I said, I didn't have anyone in my family who was a lawyer, and I had to find out a lot of these things by myself. And while I was definitely not naive, it can be a surprise to people. And as we see the statistics, especially in the legal profession, for mental health and the consequences of that, such as burnouts. I think it's not really reflective on those people who suffer those mental health issues. It's not really on them, but I think it's rather a symptom that there's a lack of support or a lack of genuine inclusion in the profession. And while I have been really fortunate, it's not the reality for everyone. And I think law students, lawyers should be alive to that. And so, especially when we talk about tokenism, imposter syndrome, and high attrition rates, those are very prevalent among underrepresented groups. So when we talk about the current state of profession, I think it's also important to realize that just generally in the workplace, we know a Forbes reported that women are assumed less competent than men, or people of color are less likely to get job interviews. And the legal profession is not immune to these statistics. So when we look at imposter syndrome, so that's when I'm talking about someone's persistent inability to believe that their success was deserved or legitimately achieved. So there was a book, it was called The Psychology of Successful Women. It shows that studies show that 80% of lawyers experience imposter syndrome. compared to 70% of the general population. Then when I talk about tokenism, so that's the practice of making only symbolic efforts to do a particular thing to give the appearance of equality within a workforce. There's actually quite an interesting, it was called Law.com International Investigation, and they uncovered how tokenism is rife among different legal industries, but especially the UK. And a lot of minority lawyers described how their names and images were used on client pitches and promotional materials, which they actually had nothing to do with. So as junior lawyers, given the power dynamic, you'd feel quite flattered at first, knowing that, you know, you're being selected for this opportunity, but it's likely that they recognize what's actually happening later on as they become more senior. So it's also about, as a law student and as a junior lawyer, not being taken advantage of. And with high attrition rates, we see that employees are turning over pretty quickly. So there's a lack of work-life balance. And that's a concern with around 60% of young lawyers saying that that's a primary concern for them. And we see that more than 50% of lawyers under 40 actually plan to leave the profession in the next 5 years. So clearly there's stuff that needs to be improved on. And that's the whole premise of this presentation. But I think enough about the background. Let's get into the meaty side of the presentation. And that is the potential of AI in promoting inclusivity. So I asked ChatGPT when it was initially published, how can AI assist in creating an inclusive legal profession? So the irony was not lost to me that I was using AI to discuss how AI can help us. But the chatbot suggested that AI could remove biases from recruitment, which you had mentioned previously in the word cloud, promote inclusive communication, which I saw as well, enhance accessibility, and support employee well-being. So as we'll discuss today, yes, while there are these possibilities, it also comes with limitations. So AI has the potential to be a powerful tool for promoting inclusivity, but you know, for example, screening resumes without the unconscious bias that often influence human decisions. So these systems can evaluate candidates purely based on qualification and experience, really hoping to level the playing field. Additionally, AI can assist in identifying patterns of discrimination or bias in hiring and promotional practices. So that allows law firms to address these issues more effectively. So yes, I believe that AI does hold a tool for change. But yeah, in the profession generally, so for example, Ashurst has recently partnered with Harvey, which is a leading provider of AI solution for legal and professional services. And so it's actually one of the first in the legal market. So we're all very excited, but they assisted with various aspects of client work. So document review, due diligence, drafting and market research. So beyond these operational uses, AI has the potential to drive cultural, structural changes that could make the profession more inclusive. So one of the most compelling aspects of AI is the ability to process vast amounts of data quickly and objectively. So this capacity could be harnessed to identify and address biases that are often embedded in human decision-making processes, as I flagged recently. Traditional hiring processes in the legal profession are, and just generally, I think as well in any hiring practices, can be riddled with bias. So that's both unconscious and conscious, and that can disadvantage candidates from diverse backgrounds. And I think especially important when it's your first time applying in a legal role or clerkships or jobs. It is quite daunting when you think about this. But these biases can manifest in various ways, from the language used in job postings to criteria used to evaluate the legal candidates. So by analyzing job applications without the influence of unconscious bias, AI tools can ensure that candidates are assessed based on their qualifications, not their demographic characteristics. So for example, as you can see on the screen there, Remoti is among many entities using AI in recruitment. So the AI filters job descriptions for bias, filters CVs, arranges interviews, and even reviews the contracts. So AI offers the potential to remove these biases by anonymizing candidate information, focusing on skills and qualifications rather than personal attributes that might trigger bias. So, for example, AI-driven recruitment tools can remove identifiers such as names, genders, and ethnicities from resumes, ensuring that candidates are evaluated purely on their merits. And it's been argued that this can help playing the level field for candidates from underrepresented backgrounds. I, however, have a slight query as to whether this is the best way to remove bias, that being removing, any essence of your name, your gender, and your ethnicity. Because I don't know about you, but I feel like that really makes up my lived experience and who I am. So it does feel sometimes that, do I really need to do all these things in order to be receive to be able to be taken seriously and to be judged on my merits. So yeah, I do have a bit of a query when it comes to this, but I again appreciate the sentiment of this. So while AI can help mitigate biases in recruitment, it's not a solution. So the systems are actually only as unbiased as the data they are trained on. So if the data reflects existing biases, such as a history of predominantly recruiting certain demographics, the AI may and most likely will inadvertently perpetuate that bias. Also, I think it's important that AI should not be seen as a replacement for human judgment in the recruitment process. So while AI can help identify qualified candidates and reduce the influence of bias, it is ultimately up to human recruiters to really make the final decision. And I think it's important not to place too much emphasis on AI in that sense. Now, when it comes to job performance, AI can promote inclusivity in the evaluation of performance evaluation. So performance evaluations are generally important for professional development, bonuses, but more importantly, career planning. So in many organizations, these evaluations are subjective and prone to bias, which can really disadvantage employees from underrepresented groups. So for example, research has shown that women and people of color are often held to higher standards than their white male counterparts, and that they are more likely to receive negative feedback that is not related to their actual performance. So here is where AI can make performance evaluations more objective. So they can analyze data on employees' performance, such as work output, client feedback, peer reviews. And by focusing on measurable outcomes rather than subjective impressions, AI could help ensure that all employees are evaluated fairly and consistently. This could help reduce the risk of bias on promotion and compensation decisions, making it easier for underrepresented groups to advance within the legal profession. And you will see here an example. You see Zavi has key applications of AI in performance, which include identifying the success of an employee, analyzing data, linking areas of improvement, and also providing coaching on those areas. So clearly very niche. However, as with recruitment, the effectiveness of AI in performance evaluation depends on the quality and representation of the data used. So if the data reflects existing biases, such as favoring certain types of works or clients, the AI may again inadvertently reinforce these biases. So while AI can ensure objectivity in performance evaluations, it should not be seen as a, again, replacement for human judgment, because I think performance evaluations is not just about measuring outcomes. It should also be about understanding the context in which those outcomes were achieved, and recognizing the unique contributions of each employee. So definitely a tool, not necessarily a substitute. We'll go now into inclusive communication, which is one of the words that I saw come up in the word cloud. So language, powerful tool that can include or exclude people generally, but especially in a professional setting. So the way we communicate can significantly impact feelings of belonging and respect. So AI-powered language tools can help monitor and promote inclusive language use within the firms. For example, AI can scan internal communications to identify potentially insensitive or exclusionary language, offering suggestions for more inclusive alternatives. So when I was creating this presentation, I actually came across Trinker, which offers, you'll see it over there, it offers AI inclusive language checks. So they do real-time checks, providing instant writing corrections and inclusive language alerts relating to gender, disability, racial, religious, nationality, and age, and other attributes. So I thought that was quite useful and definitely should be implemented more generally. And I think this doesn't only create a welcoming environment, but also educates employees on the importance of mindful communication. And over time, this could, influence a cultural shift within a legal firm or organization, and inclusive language should be the norm rather than the exception. So I think that was quite a handy tool, and generally as well, AI-driven translation and speech recognition tools can enhance accessibility for employees who may face language barriers or have disabilities. These technologies can provide real-time translation, visual recognition, and speech-to-text services, ensuring that all employees can really participate fully in the workplace interactions. And on that point, also with enhancing accessibility, I think one of the most transformative aspects of AI is the ability to enhance accessibility within the legal profession. So obviously this is important post-COVID hybrid working situations and environments where flexibility and remote work has become increasingly prevalent. So AI-powered tools can provide accommodations for employees with disabilities, ensuring they have equal access to resources and opportunities. So, for example, an AI-driven screen reader and voice recognition software, such as Cardome, can assist visually impaired lawyers in navigating legal documents and drafting contracts. And one of my friends actually uses this program. Similarly, AI can provide real-time captioning for meetings, making them accessible to hearing impaired participants. So in a broader sense, AI can also help law firms create more flexible work environments that accommodate diverse needs. For instance, AI can actually analyze work patterns and the softwares to do this to identify opportunities for flexible scheduling or remote work, which allows employees to balance their professional and personal lives more efficiently. And that ties back to the high attrition rates. So this not only promotes inclusivity, but also helps retain top talent in a competitive legal market. And lastly, supporting employees' well-being. So the legal profession is known for its high-pressure environment, which can take a toll on mental health and well-being. So AI can actually play a role in supporting employee well-being by identifying potential stresses and authorizing personalized well-being and wellness recommendations. So for example, AI-driven platforms can monitor workload distribution, travel schedules, and other factors that may contribute to burnout. By analyzing this data, AI can flag potential issues before they escalate, offering suggestions for self-care or recommended mental health resources. This proactive approach can help create a more supportive work environment where employees feel valued, feel cared for, and an example of this is the Blink Wellbeing platform, which is on the screen over there. So while AI can identify potential wellbeing issues, I also think it's important to note that it is up to your employee and the firm that you choose to work at, if you choose to work at a firm, to act on these insights. So technology alone obviously cannot create a supportive culture. It requires a commitment from senior management to prioritize employees' well-being and take proactive steps to really address any underlying issues that may arise. So those are a few things as to how AI can promise to be a tool for change. And obviously the implementations of a lot of these programs is also dependent on how willing management is to implement them, but also different budgets for certain things. But I do think it's interesting to have the facts in front of you that AI can be a tool for change in these ways. But I also think it's important to know, well, all these programs look amazing. AI is not a magic bullet. And while it has the potential to reduce bias and hold greater promise for promoting inclusivity in the legal profession, it is essential to recognize the risks and challenges associated with this technology. So one of the most significant risks is the potential for AI to, as I've mentioned previously, perpetuate and even amplify existing biases if not carefully designed and implemented. And that's where the conversation as to ethical considerations come into mind, which I was not really aware of until I really started researching AI and legal inclusivity. So AI systems, as we've spoken about previously, is trained on data. And if that data reflects existing biases, such as a history of discriminating in a certain demographic, the AI may reproduce those biases. So that is a particular concern in the legal profession where biases related to race, gender, and other factors have been deeply entrenched for centuries, especially with how we've dealt with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here. So a notorious example of how this could actually go wrong is in 2018 when Amazon's AI recruitment tool was found to disproportionately discriminate against female candidates due to biased training data. So this incident underscores the importance of ethnically constructed AI platforms that prioritize explainability and accountability. So it's essential to ensure that the AI systems are trained on diverse and representative data, and that they are regularly audited to identify and address any biases that may emerge. It also requires a willingness to challenge and change the existing systems and structures that produce and perpetuate these biases. So to harness AI's potential while minimizing its risks, we must prioritize ethical considerations. This includes ensuring, as I mentioned, diverse representation in the development of AI technologies, rigorous testing for biases, and ongoing oversight to address unintended consequences, and really being proactive when it comes to that. So it's not enough to, just adopt AI. It must be done thoughtfully and responsibly. So as legal professionals, we have a responsibility to ensure that AI is used ethically and responsibly in our profession. So one of the key ethical considerations in the use of AI is transparency. I don't know how much you know about how the intricacies of AI systems, but they're often described as being black boxes because it's difficult to actually understand how they arrived at their decision. This lack of transparency can make it challenging to identify and address biases, and it can sometimes undermine a bit of trust in the technology too. So it's essential to ensure that AI are designed and implemented in ways that are transparent and explainable, allowing us to understand how they work and hold them accountable for their decisions as well. As legal professionals, we have a responsibility to ensure that AI is used in ways that promote justice and fairness. And I think this also means being proactive in identifying and addressing any biases or inequalities that may arise in the use of AI. Yes, and I think it was quite interesting as well. For example, there was an AI talent assessment platform called HireVue, and they announced the creation of an expert advisory board, which would help guide ethical AI development. So it's definitely an emerging front, and I think that stems from that concerns when it comes to recruitment and perpetuating bias. So there are platforms out there that are addressing ethical considerations when it comes to this, and I think that's promising. But when we look at the future of AI and inclusivity in the legal profession, it's still being written. We have the opportunity to shape it in a way that promotes inclusivity, transparency, fairness, but I think this requires collaboration across sectors, not just legal professionals, but also technologists, policymakers, and various other people. So a promising application of AI, I think, especially going in the future, is actually addressing workplace culture. So AI, could provide insights into unspoken dynamics that shape how individuals are treated within an organization or a law firm by analyzing patterns like we touched upon in communication, promotion decisions, and other workplace interactions. AI can actually help identify where inclusivity may be lacking, which may address some of the issues we have with measuring inclusivity. I also think it's important with this approach to be cautious that AI can provide valuable insights, but it's, as I've been mentioning, it's ultimately up to human leaders to interpret these findings and take appropriate action. So I think AI should more be seen as a diagnostic tool that helps us understand our workplace culture, but it cannot replace the need for human judgment, leadership, partnership in the legal profession. I think when we're circling back to the current state of the legal profession, especially when it comes to retention rates, I think AI could play a role in promoting inclusivity when addressing retention. Some research has shown that employees who feel included are more likely to stay with their organization. And I think this is quite obvious. If you feel like you belong, you feel included, you'd want to stay in that with your employee. But those who feel marginalized or excluded are more likely to leave. So AI can obviously help address these retention issues by identifying disengaged employees and offering insights into the factors contributing to their disconnection. So they can analyze patterns in employees' behavior, such as decreased participation in meetings or reduced collaboration with colleagues, to identify those at risk of leaving. I also think there's a side note, potential privacy concerns where if we give AI, an unlimited scope to analyze every single thing of our lives and of work. But this is just a suggestion for how it can address retention. Like I said, looking ahead, the future of AI and inclusivity in the legal profession is exciting and uncertain at the same time. And I think ultimately a key takeaway is that AI should not be a substitute for human judgment and leadership. And it is still very important to remain vigilant in identifying and addressing any unintended consequences of this technology. So before I conclude, I just would like to, if we can go back, Crystal, on the word cloud. And I just wanted to get your insights. Have your views changed? Has maybe something sparked further ideas from you on how AI can contribute to legal diversity? And then after my closing remarks, I'm really happy to have a discussion with you or hear any insights that you feel have been brought up during this presentation. But yeah, I'll give you a moment to respond, and then we can chat a little bit about that. Yeah, data-driven insights that definitely with all the platforms and programs available, that is something that it seems like AI can contribute to legal inclusivity. Support by firm funding, yes, that's like a way in which AI can contribute. Open conversations. Objectivity, algorithmic law, blind application review. Yeah, forms of training. So it is kind of touching on a lot of the points that were brought up during the presentation. And I think it's interesting also seeing a shift from more general descriptions to a bit more specific. And I think this is more about like ways in which it can be applied as well, with whether that's firm funding or training. Like, this is more how we see it practically being carried out. So I think that's very useful. There has been a slight change to that. And I think thanks for that, Crystal. And just finishing up, obviously a little bit of a summary. I do think that AI holds immense potential to transform the legal profession into a more inclusive and equitable field. Like I mentioned, from removing biases in recruitment to wellbeing programs, AI offers powerful tools that can help us to create a more diverse and welcoming profession. Like I said, it's important, I think, to remember that AI is not suitable for human decisions and leaderships, and it is ultimately a tool that can help enhance our efforts, but it is ultimately up to employees to take responsible steps to create an inclusive culture. And this includes committing to ethical AI practices and, like I mentioned, being very proactive with that. So AI, I think, is not just a technological advancement. In some ways, I believe it mirrors, it is a mirror for reflecting the values of the society that creates it. And if we are committed to inclusivity, we must ensure that our use of AI reflects that commitment. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we'll embrace this opportunity to transform our profession, making it not just more effective, but more inclusive, just, and ultimately equitable. So that's it from me, just my 2 cents on the topic. And yes, please, if I'll pass it on to Georgia, I believe, to open up question time.
Yes, thank you so much, Angelique. That was so informative. I know I speak on behalf of everyone when I say we've learnt so much from you. So thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
We do have time for a few questions, so we'll open it up to everyone. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat, or you're more than welcome to put your microphone on and ask Angelique a question. So yeah. Does anyone want to kick us off with any questions for Angelique? Yep, we've got a question with the person who's raised their hand.
Hi, Angelique. I want to know, what is the current use of AI in the legal practice? Like, how much do you know about that?
Yeah, thank you for that. Like I said, I believe that majority of the application of AI at the moment within the legal profession is really those traditional legal tasks when it comes to document review, due diligence, even sometimes legal research, but I would put an asterisk on that. And that's what we've seen in a lot of law firms, and especially, like I mentioned, in Ashurst as well. We're just trying to streamline processes that let's say the jobs that were traditionally belonging to paralegals or junior law clerks or lawyers, that they get to focus more on substantial legal reasoning and questioning, and maybe tasks that can be a bit more straightforward and be processed through AI is done in that way. So that's the limited kind of knowledge that I have as to how AI is currently being used in the legal profession. But like I said, especially with legal research, I would definitely query that, would not recommend that. I did see, and I'm sure you would be aware, as to there was a case in the US where a self-represented litigant or a barrister was putting arguments forth in court and was citing various case law as to why their argument was correct, but ultimately that ChatGPT had actually generated all of those case laws and there was no basis. So I would definitely say there's still a lot of value in doing our own legal research, developing your own thinking, and those are very important skills as a junior. But especially those, I think, tasks that relate to processing vast amounts of data, that is another way that AI is being used currently in the profession. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, yes, thank you. Do you mind if I have another question?
Go for
Okay.
it.
The one is so AI is kind of like a sword. You can use it for good and you can use it for like for the bias. So like how do we know that how do we know the setup of the AI? Like is it from whoever set up or make up or decide the AI, or depend does it depend on the culture or the boss of that company?
Okay, thank you for that. So correct me, please correct me if I'm wrong, but is your question surrounding how effective AI could be generally, and it whether it depends on work culture or the person that programs the AI? Is that kind of the realm of your question?
Sorry, I meant it to be that like how do we know that the setup or the design of the AI, like whether it's neutral enough or whether this AI will increase the bias in the company?
Yes, yes. Okay, no, thank you for clarifying. I think that is a very valid question, and I think that's where the concern is to what data is being fed. And I think it is the responsibility of the people who program, but also, let's say, the HR or senior leadership, to first review that data and identify patterns of bias, so that the programmer of let's say if it's for a recruitment tool, can be aware and can counter that bias. Yeah, I think that is a very valid question. And I think that's where the question as to ethical considerations come into play, ensuring that if, let's say, bias data is being processed, that it's being dealt with proactively, but I think being very alive to the fact that the data will most likely be somewhat questionable and needs to be taken with a grain of salt. So yes, I think very, very valid question. And something that I think a lot of law firms, legal profession, maybe just workforce in generally, is trying to counter as well.
We probably have time for one more question. If anyone has come up with one, if you want to put it in the chat, or like I said before, please feel comfortable to turn your microphone on if you would like to. Anthea.
Thanks, Georgia. Thanks so much for your presentation, Angelique. So much to cover in such a short amount of time, and a really good overview of the potentials and some of the dangers. I was really struck by your comment that the kind of flattening of data and that idea of formal equality isn't necessarily the goal in terms of diversity and inclusion in the workforce, and whether or not you see a potential for thinking more creatively about how we train AI in terms of data oversight and management and kind of analysis practices that could actually kind of take into account what we talk about as substantive equality. So an AI that can take into consideration not removing everyone's personal details and not erasing the ways in which diversity is important, but kind of bringing that into the ways in which you might operate in relation to hiring practices or legal culture in a firm.
Yeah, because there is something, I think, to be said if you have to remove all those details in order to not be to not have bias against you. So I that was more a query for myself as well when I was researching, is if there is a way to still bring our whole self and our lived experiences and our names and our genders and things that we are very proud of and things that make us who we are. And if there is a way that AI can counter those potential biased attributes. So yeah, I think more of a question than an answer for me. But some of my friends are actually in programming AI and stuff like that, and it's a completely different world. But I'll definitely pose it to them if there is possibilities to do this. And I also see in the chat that Mona put some great examples here as to how I think you said that you're training your own model and sourcing data ethically while linking back to the original sources. So definitely we'll be interested in hearing a bit more about that, whether on this call or separately as well. But yeah, it is something that I think to keep thinking about as well. Yeah.
Crystal, do you have a question?
Yes, actually, I'm just vocalizing a question in the chat. So someone's asked a question about, are there any laws about AI use?
That is a great question. There's nothing that I'm aware of when it comes to legal diversity AI use. But I do know that there is some conversations about monitoring AI use and how that's been done if someone's maybe more qualified than me to talk about this. But yeah, that's a question for me as well. Maybe I need to do a bit of research on that.
If anyone has any final questions, now would be the time to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, we are closely approaching 7, so we'll wrap up the talk. So we'll just wait maybe 10 more seconds, see if anyone has a final question. But if not, we will begin to wrap up for our talk tonight.
I might just make a quick note that Mona very usefully have put in some links noting that there are no laws yet, but frameworks. And definitely in the sphere that I cover relating to digital assets and things like that, that's something that we're starting to see as well. So yeah, thanks for Mona for those links.
Okay, well, no further questions have come in, so I think we will keep it there. But I would just like to, on behalf of the UTS Faculty of Law and the UTS Law Student Society, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to you, Angelique, for taking the time to share your expertise and your knowledge with us tonight. We've been really fortunate to hear your insights, and I know I speak on behalf of everyone here when I say that today's presentation has definitely prompted a deeper consideration and appreciation for how AI can be utilised to promote inclusivity within the legal profession. So yeah, thank you for your advocacy for diversity in the legal landscape, and as well as for sharing your knowledge with us today. It's really appreciated.
Of course, thank you so much for having me, and I'm always happy to have a chat. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn if you need my email address. I'm always happy to help out my fellow law students. Yeah, so please don't be a stranger.
Thank you. Just quickly before everyone heads off as well, I'd like to thank Crystal, Anthea, Savan, Beck, and Chloe, our Brennan social justice team, for helping administrate and organize tonight's talk. And thank you to our attendees for coming and listening. Your participation is invaluable, and we hope that today's discussion will serve as a catalyst for future engagement and reflection in the Brennan program and with social justice. And just a reminder, everyone will receive their 5 ROJ points for attending today's event. As I'm sure most of you are aware, it is Tech and Social Justice Week, and we have lots more events coming up this week. I think Crystal will pop a link in the chat potentially about the other events we've got coming up, but tomorrow we have a law, tech and social justice research panel that's online at 12:15. And that will have the UTS Faculty of Law, Technology and IP cluster explain their latest research and its social justice implications. Then on Wednesday, there's a free training session with Checkbox hosted online on how to upskill your use of legal technology. And then finally on Thursday, to wrap up our fantastic Tech and Social Justice Week, we have a New Frontiers in Law, Technology and Social Justice panel and networking event, so on Thursday evening, where you will hear from industry experts about topics such as how legal tech can revolutionize access to justice for individuals and communities, as well as the human rights implications of cutting-edge areas of technology. So they're all really fantastic events, which you can register for via Humanitix, I believe. And we hope to see many of you there. So yeah, once again, thank you so much, Angelique, for your time tonight, and thank you everyone for attending.
Of course, thank you. Have a great evening, everyone.